So today we're going to be learning the gates of trust and meditation and prayer. We're moving very quickly through the gates of trust. We're onto a whole new topic, which we're hopefully going to finish today, and that is the idea of the world to come. The whole concept of Gan Eden. We're not talking about the world of Mashiach, which is Olam Haba. That is when our souls will be restored, resurrected back into our bodies. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about heaven, which is Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. When we leave this world, when we divest of our bodies, then our souls go where? They go to heaven. That's where they came from. And that is a fundamental principle in science, that energy is never lost. It's the law of the conservation of energy. It only changes form. So certainly that's true of our lives, that they don't just vanish and disappear, but they move into another form. They go in from a physical into a spiritual form. And the big question we're learning about in the gates of trust is, why is the Torah apparently silent to this idea of heavenly reward? It seems that the Torah is only talking about physical reward in this world, but the Torah doesn't talk about heaven. And we, in the gates of trust now, are learning the 7 reasons why the Torah doesn't talk about heaven explicitly. The first 2 reasons that we learned last week were that we simply cannot fathom the spiritual realm. Much like a blind man cannot begin to understand or appreciate color, or like a deaf man cannot begin to understand the beauty of music. You can try until you turn blue in the face, but you can't explain to them what music is. So too, and much more so, are we unable to fathom and grasp and appreciate the rewards, the joy, the bliss of heaven, of a spiritual heaven, when we are physical beings. That was the first reason why heaven is not promised to us as a reward in the Torah. The second reason we learned that it was better to transmit it via the oral tradition as opposed to doing it in the written tradition, in the written Torah. The written Torah is very difficult to understand because you have no context. It's in the oral Torah that at least gives us some context. When it was decided to teach us about heaven, it was done through the prophets, it was done through the Talmud, where you had a teacher, a coach, a guide, someone to be able to explain to you parameters and at least give you some sort of a sense of context and contrast. That was the second reason why heaven is not explained to us in the Torah, explicitly in the written Torah, but rather in the oral Torah. We're carrying on now in this book, The Duties of the Heart. We're on page 436. And I'm going to be doing this in a much quicker way. We're not reading it fully inside. I'm going to be skipping around, but at least you know the general context of where we are. The third reason for why heaven is not explicitly told to us in the written Torah is because the generation that received the Torah were spiritually immature. We know the stories of how they complained about everything. When Moses wanted to tell them to go into the Red Sea, they were afraid. They were like, there's an ocean there. It took one guy, thank God, there was one guy that had the courage, that had the trust, the doctrine of trust to be able to march into the sea. Nachshon ben Aminadav was his name. He was the leader of the tribe of Yehuda. And he was, true to his name, a leader of Israel, the leader of the future kings of Israel, King David's dynasty. He blazed his own trail. They complained that the food wasn't good enough in the desert. What else is new? They all sorts of complaints. Not necessary to get into it right now, but can you imagine? God is providing you with manna. It's magical bread. It's bread that tastes like whatever you want it to taste like. It magically appears at your doorstep every single morning. It tastes like whatever you want it to taste, and you don't go to the bathroom because every part of it is absorbed into your body. Yet they said, well, we want some meat. Can you imagine? It's like that's what they would do. They were so spiritually mature that it made no sense for God to tell them about a reward that was far off. They needed to be able to relate to the here and now, like a little child who's having a tantrum. You tell them, listen, you behave, you get a Slurpee. You don't behave, you're going to be sent to your room. There's no point in reasoning with a child about the long-term benefits of their good behavior because you're struggling in the here and now. And that's the third reason. Let's take a look at it. Another reason is that the people were in a state of ignorance and deficiency of understanding, which is not hidden in the scriptural account. The Creator acted toward them as a sensitive father would act toward his little child when he wanted to train him gently, step by step, as it is written, Israel was a child, and I loved him. When a father wants to teach his young son wisdom, which ultimately will enable him to ascend to the higher levels, but which he cannot presently understand, if he tries to induce the child to learn by saying to him, endure the strain of discipline and instruction, so that through them you may ascend to esteemed levels, that's going to go over like a lead balloon. The child would be unable to bear it and will not listen to him because he doesn't get it. But if the father promises him things that bring him immediate pleasure, such as food and drink, attractive clothing, a nice wagon, we'll get a good car. I'll buy a nice car, a $2 matchstick toy car. That's something the kid can relate to, and threatens him with immediate discomfort like hunger, nakedness, spankings, and the like, while reassuring him with the convincing, tangible arguments and the clear and truthful evidence. It will be easier for him to endure the strain of discipline and bear with its difficulty. When he reaches adolescence and his mind is matured, he will understand the intended goal of his training and direct himself toward it, while the pleasures for which he had been so eager at the beginning of his way will appear unimportant to him. So later on, when he matures, he might get it. Such an upbringing proves to be a great kindness towards him. So that's why the generation that received the Torah, they were the written Torah. They were spiritually mature. They got the rewards, the promise of reward and punishment of this world. Later on, when the prophets came along, when the oral law was expounded more and more and more, that's where we received the oral explanation of heaven, because by then we were far more spiritually mature. By the way, if you think about it, why don't we have miracles today? God has abandoned us. Why doesn't he do miracles for us like he did for us way back then? So a beautiful explanation I saw is because they simply, good morning, Daniel, they simply needed it. They needed the miracles because they were a bunch of vagabonds. They were just nomads. They were coming out of the desert into slavery in Egypt. And they didn't have a clue. They were like lost spiritually. They needed a miracle to sort of get them focused. But now we have such a rich heritage of miracles. We have so many yontivs. We have Pesach, we have Shavuos, we have Sukkot, we have Rosh Hashanah, we have Hanukkah, we got Purim. We got such a repertoire of miracles that we are far more insightful. We're able to meditate and reflect deeply on the messages of the miracles that we don't need the miracles as much as they did. An interesting explanation. Marty, I see you agree with me. That's interesting. I was about to ask you. I was curious to know if you agree, but I see that you do, so that's great. We don't need them. Listen, I could use a miracle. Let's be honest. I could use a miracle here or there. Wouldn't it be lovely if we woke up to the 10 o'clock news this morning to find out that the coronavirus has mysteriously vanished? Wow, that would be amazing. Everybody go back to normal. I was talking to my mom in South Africa a few minutes ago. She's like, yeah, they don't know what they're doing in the country, but the South African government doesn't really know what they're doing, but they know that the whole country's in lockdown. Everyone's in lockdown. Nobody can do anything. But what's happening in the meantime, they're not quite sure. It's not like they have the infrastructure to develop and take care of the people and, vaccinate or even test. But, that would be a nice miracle. But we are expecting and anticipating the ultimate miracle, which is the coming of Mashiach, the ultimate purpose of it all. I'd like to welcome Jan. Good morning, Jan. Welcome to the daily Torah study here in honor of Mickey Gottlieb on his 75th birthday. Mickey, we do have miracles today, just more hidden. You know what, Mickey, you're right. See, you're like a sage. You're right. You got it. When you have vision to be able to see more than meets the eye, you can see the hidden miracles. In fact, that was actually one of the last things that the Rebbe told us, Mick. That is that we should open our eyes. We got to open the eyes and see how the world around us is filled with miracles, and Mashiach is imminent, is on our doorstep. Okay, so similarly, the Creator. So this is the third reason why the Torah doesn't tell us explicitly about the rewards of heaven, because the generation that received the Torah wasn't ready to receive it. They were just too immature. Similarly, the Creator may be exalted, held out to his people promises of immediate rewards and threats of immediate punishment, knowing that as soon as they would be trained for his servants, their ignorance, for his service, their ignorance of reward and punishment in the next world would be banished. Their aim in serving him would be for his sake alone, and they would comply with his service to draw near to him. Gotcha. So that, my friends, is the third reason for why the Torah doesn't tell us about a reward in heaven. But there's a fourth reason, which is man on his own cannot earn it. It is a reward from God. It's not our own merits alone that guarantee us the heavenly reward. You see, if the heavenly reward was some sort of a cause and effect, that A plus B equals C, it would be far more logical for God to tell us that if you do A and B, then you'll get C. But that's not the case. That's not how heaven works. Heaven is such, this ties into the first, was it the first reason? Yeah, the first reason, where we said we couldn't even relate to what heaven actually is. Heavenly reward is something so incredibly removed from our reality that it's not something which is the sum total of our efforts. Our efforts plus God's magnanimous blessing, that's what gives us the heavenly reward. We'll see that in a moment, but that's the kernel of the principle here. That heaven is such an incredible reward, so much more than what we deserve. Therefore, it's not something which could be guaranteed to us in the Torah, because how do we know that we're actually going to be receiving that? I think I used the example of American Express Black, which is a mysterious credit card level that you can't actually earn. If you reach a certain threshold of spending and whatever American Express deems top tier client, then they may choose to invite you or not to invite you to join American Express Black, which is like an unlimited credit line or something, and other benefits. So it's not like they can say that these are our options. You can get the Sapphire card, the Platinum card, the whatever card, and the Black card. The Black card is not listed because you can't actually apply for it. It's something which we choose you, not you choose it. And that's the reason why the Torah doesn't advertise heaven, just like American Express doesn't advertise Black, because we reserve the right about who gets in here, not you. Yes, your effort is very important, but at the end of the day, it's not your effort that reaches you into there. It's your effort plus God's choosing. Boker Tov Ravi from Ron Collins. Hi, Ron. Andy, are we so mature now? I guess you're still on the previous answer, which I must have missed over here. You're on the third one. Are we so mature now? Is it reflected in our society's fear response to the COVID plague? Has our society shown the appropriate trust response? So you ask a good question, Andy, but I say to you this, that the fact that we can even study a book like this, Duties of the Heart, an 11th century work by Rabbeinu Bechaye of Saragossa, Spain, for someone to lay out faith on such a logical sequence is something that they just didn't have. We have had the benefit of time, Andy, to be able to assimilate and to marinate in these ideas, not over 10 or 20 years, but over thousands of years, to be able to collectively mature as a people. And I think the fact that we can have such a steady group of people studying every day the gates of trust and the various things that we study over here is an indication that society is going through a spiritual awakening. And that ultimate awakening is going to happen with the coming of Mashiach. But I do think that we are far more advanced than they were in Egypt. Yeah, I mean, think about what we learned a few weeks ago, that in Egypt, 80% of the Jewish people died in Egypt. They were not part of the Exodus because they didn't actually believe it was going to happen. Think about that for a second, right? They experienced 8 devastating plagues at the hands of Moses, God through Moses. And they still didn't believe them that they were going to get out of Egypt. That gives you the context. How many Jews today believe that Mashiach is coming? I would like to think that it's more than 20%. But it doesn't matter what other people think. It matters what you think. That's what counts, what you and I think. And if you are in this class and if you are studying together with me, then it means that we are advanced. Could be everybody else has already fulfilled their purpose in a previous reincarnation, and they're all waiting for you and me to just reach their level. So don't worry about everybody else. Let's just worry about ourselves. And that's how I understand the situation here. Okay. For example, the 6-Day War, says Mickey. I'm trying to think of what context you're saying that. The 6-Day War. Hi, Sandy. Nice to see you. Marty says, that's why Hashem had 10 plagues rather than going directly to number 10. That's right. He had to educate them slowly, right? He couldn't just take them out of Egypt. If God wanted to take us out of Egypt, he could have just nuked the Egyptians and that would be it. God needed to educate the society. He needed to educate all of humanity about the existence of God. He tells us so explicitly in the Torah. It was an educational process of 10 plagues, right? And that's, you're saying about the 6-Day War being a modern day miracle, a hidden miracle. I gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Andy, okay, we have matured a bit since the Exodus. Well, let's speed it up so we don't have to suffer anymore. We can experience the coming of, and Mashiach is a lot like heaven. You know, we've got to reach our state of highest level that we can reach. And that's when God invites us in to be able to experience heaven. Okay. So let's just do this part inside. I'm on to the fourth reason over here. The reason for this is that even if a human being's good deeds were as numerous as the sands of the sea, they still would not be equal to even one of the favors bestowed upon him by the Creator. May he be exalted. God is so removed from us qualitatively that nothing that we do is truly deserving of God's kindness. They would still not be equal to even one of the favors bestowed upon him by the Creator may be exalted in this world, all the more so if he committed a sin. If the Creator were to hold a man strictly to account and demanding gratitude for these favors, all his good deeds would be neutralized and erased by the smallest of the Creator's favors towards him. Any reward bestowed upon him by the Creator is not deserved on account of his deeds, but is the result of God's grace towards him. A further reason, so that really is the fourth reason as to why it is that God doesn't tell us about heaven in the Torah, because it's not something which is guaranteed. Your good deeds plus God's grace is what gives you heaven, not your good deeds alone. Therefore, it's not listed in the Torah because you may or may not reach it. And you need to employ the doctrine of trust, as we'll learn later in the seventh reason. We're right now in the sixth general need of man, where it's very technical mind we're dealing with Rabbeinu Bechaya here, but we are in the middle of the sixth of seven needs of mankind towards God. Then man needs to rely upon God. The seventh one is related to what we just said, but I don't want to get lost in that. So right now we're in the fourth reason as to why heaven is not listed in the Torah. The reason is because we don't actually deserve it in and of our own efforts. It's something which has to be bestowed upon us in addition to our efforts, and therefore, since it's not guaranteed, it's not listed. Number 5, the fifth reason. The fifth reason is because it is a reward for man's inner or hidden intentions. The world to come is a reward for our inner intentions, for our hidden merits. Let's take a look. A further reason that Scripture does not elaborate on reward and punishment in the world to come is that the practice of goodness is of two kinds. One of these is concealed. None but the Creator observes it, which is duties of the heart, how you feel inside your heart when you serve God inside. And the other kind is observable in physical movements and is not concealed from other people. These are the active precepts performed with the limbs of the body, right? So when it comes to mitzvahs like a sukkah or a tefillin, it's pretty obvious that you did the mitzvah. But then there's how you felt in your heart. There's the love you felt to a fellow Jew, the love and awe that you feel to God. What is your degree of love and awe? Obviously, it's not anything which anybody else knows. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you love your wife? Don't answer that question aloud. Obviously, we all would love to be a 10, and we strive to be a 10 or a 12. But I challenge you to think about how much you love your God. Is the love of your God anywhere near to the love of your wife, the love of your children? Is it more like the love to your 12th cousin 8 times removed? Is that your love to God? Right? Obviously, a mature spiritual being, a mature person, will have a sophisticated love of God, one which is advanced, just like you have a sophisticated relationship with your spouse, right? You'll be able to love God in a tangible way, but that's something which is not something that nobody else is able to really perceive. Only God perceives that. That's the hidden intent. In regard to the inner service and transgression of the heart, however, the Creator may be exalted, is responsible for requiting them. For reward and punishment which is hidden, that's something which God himself gives to us in this world and in the next world. That is why the scripture does not elaborate on reward in the world to come. So revealed things, the revealed merits that we do, those we get rewarded for in this world. So for the fulfillment of observable duties, the Creator bestows a visible reward in this world. For the fulfillment of inner hidden duties, he gives a hidden reward. That is the reward of the world to come. By nature, by definition, is supposed to be hidden. Since it's a reward for something which comes from hidden merits, therefore the reward itself is also mysterious and therefore inappropriate to be described explicitly, something whose very nature is mystique. And David referred to this in a beautiful language in Helen 30:31. He says, "Great is your good that you have hidden away for those who fear you." How great is your good that you have hidden away for those who fear you, right? And we learned about it in last week's Torah portion as well. Last week's Torah portion, the very final portion of the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, says, proof of this is God's promise to his people that for visible service, there will be visible, immediate reward in this world. As stated explicitly in last week's Torah portion, if you walk in my statutes, I will give you rain in its time. If you study Torah, I'll give you rain in its time. And then for visible, external transgressions, there will be visible, immediate punishments in this world. There was a long list of curses at the end of last week's Torah portion, in the middle. And it was pretty gruesome, the curses that we read about in the Torah. That's for visible sin. This is because the people as a community are responsible only for external acts, not for what is hidden. As it says, hidden things belong to Hashem our God, but those that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever. If the people of the community in any way hide their eyes from that person, then I will set my face against that person and his family. And that, my friends, is the fifth reason for why heaven is not mentioned in the Torah, because heaven is essentially a reward for hidden merits, and therefore it needs to remain such in a way that is hidden. The sixth reason, 6 of 7, we're almost done here. Sixth reason why heaven is not mentioned. As we go through these reasons, by the way, we're getting a nice context on a subject that we rarely discuss in Torah. By learning the reasons, I want you to understand, listen not to the reason, but listen to the words in between. Listen to the innuendo of the reasons and what they tell us about the nature of the world to come. One of the things that we've learned about heaven right now is that it is something so incredibly unfathomable. It's something which we can't even describe. That's how amazing it is. That right there gives us a tremendous comfort in death. As you think of losing loved ones, and we're so devastated, thinking that they're gone forever. Suddenly now we're introduced to a tremendous comforting context as we realize that they're in such an amazing place right now. They're doing great. Yes, they need us. They need our Kaddish. They need our Kiddush. They need our Yizkor. They need our Tzedakah. They need our merits to pick them even higher, but they're in an amazing place. Something so amazing, it's indescribable. It's the way I would say it is like describing the pleasures of a wholesome marriage. to a sworn bachelor, or describing the joys of parenting to someone who doesn't have kids, maybe. Somebody doesn't have kids, but they might come with an attitude which is like, I need kids. You got to worry about carpools and tennis practice and tuition fees and diapers and all sorts of. You don't get it. That's not what this is about. The pleasures of parenting are just so extraordinary. Looking into the eyes. I was having breakfast with my 5-year-old this morning, just me and him. Everybody else was asleep. And his eyes were just so wondrous. So inquisitive, so pure, so innocent. It was such a magnificent moment to be able to sit there as the sun was rising and we were talking about all the wonderful things in his mind. It was just such a beautiful moment. You can't describe that to someone that maybe never had kids. Just like you couldn't describe the pain of addiction or the pain of infertility to someone that never experienced it. They're like, get over it. Like, what's the problem? What if you're addicted to something, then just stop drinking the alcohol, stop taking the pain pills, and you'll be fine. Like, just pull it together. You can't explain that to someone that doesn't struggle with these problems because they just don't get it. They don't understand this is a totally different dimension to what their world is. And that's what we're experiencing with heaven, with our loved ones, when they move on to the next world. They're in such an amazing place. It is literally unfathomable. It's indescribable. It's something which would do it no justice to be able to even try to describe it. So yes, you could describe a marriage to a single person, and you could describe parenting to people with no kids, but to describe heaven is more difficult than describing Beethoven to a deaf person. Okay, so let's just do a little bit further. We got 2 more reasons to cover here today. Welcome to Bob Wertheimer. 2 more reasons to discover as to why it is that heaven is not explicitly mentioned in the Torah, both of which reasons all giving us context. The 6th reason is that the reward must be relevant to the people. And since the rewards of heaven are really not relevant to us here in this world, I guess this ties in a little bit with the spiritual immaturity that Andy was talking about earlier, that we do have an element of spiritual immaturity. Where we're not that kind of people, we still are adolescents spiritually, in the sense that we can't talk about a 100-year plan. We're more stuck in the here and now. Another reason is that in the reward and punishment mentioned in Scripture, the prophet speaks of the people of this world about reward and punishment in this world. However, Yeshua ben Yehotzadak was in the world of angels. This guy was a spiritual giant. God said to him, I will let you walk among those who stand here. This is a way of offering inducement or deterrence. It must suit the time and place. Understand this. So this really is a validation to your point, Andy, that we are actually also spiritually mature a lot like them. And that's why it's really very nuanced. It's very mitigated, the description of heaven in Torah, because we're not really there yet. I can tell you that the Rebbe talks a lot about heaven. The teachings of Chabad teach a lot about heaven. And the reason is because we are at the very, very end of exile, at the very threshold of redemption. And ready or not, this is happening. We've got to be prepared. That's what Chabad Hasidus is about. It's about teaching the world godly wisdom. Godly wisdom that will become apparent and the daily experience when Mashiach comes. So we're getting a foretaste through the teachings of Chabad Hasidus. So we have what to study to be able to pick ourselves up to a higher spiritual level. And the final reason is perhaps the most beautiful of all, is that the true reward is not the benefits that you're going to get in heaven. The true reward is the closeness to God itself. It's not about the pleasure. It's about the connection. Just like it would be pathetic to describe a marriage as an arrangement where someone cooks for you, or someone shares a bank account with you, or you get better health insurance. It's pathetic to describe a marriage like that. Marriage is about deep connection. Yes, it has the other benefits, but katan alenu, like we say in Hebrew, it's small in you to describe a marriage like that. So for us to go out and describe the benefits, the pleasures of heaven, like some sort of a 72 virgin kind of concept, which obviously we don't believe in, is just a pathetic way to describe the true bond, an intimate, a real bond with infinity, with God, with our source, with our core. It just pales in the face of what really is going on. Another reason is that the goal of the reward of the world to come is none other than to cling to God and to draw near to his supernal light. As it is written, your righteousness will go before you, the glory of God will gather you up. Those who are wise shall shine like the brilliance of the sky. Then he may be enlightened with the light of life. This is all quotes from the prophets. Then he may be enlightened with the light of life. You can't tell an enlightened person about the benefits of pizza. It doesn't get it. And this can be attained only by one who finds favor before God. So God has to welcome you into this club. Thus, favor before God is the essence of the reward. As it is written, his anger is but for a moment, life is his favor. And in the parsha of last week again, he made allusions that teach of this favor before him, as it says, I will not reject you. I will look upon you with favor. I will be your God, and you will be my people. And that, my friends, is the conclusion of the 7 reasons as to why it is that the Torah does not tell us explicitly about heaven. Right? There you got it, nice and clear. Any questions before we move on to Hebrew meditation and prayer? Do we have any questions? If you want to post anything, questions on heaven, because this is pretty much it when it comes to heaven. From here, we go into there's basically 7. We get really down into a financial relationship with God. It's very interesting. We're going to get into a real beautiful banking relationship with God for the one who trusts in God, and that's really going to wrap up the whole of the gates of trust. So unless there's any questions being posted, being thought of right now, I'll be moving it over into the next part of our study today, which is Hebrew meditation and prayer.